Hey, this is Dena. Welcome to my non-existent bakery. Maybe someday I'll have a real one. Okay, so today what I'm gonna make is something I kind of came up with. I mean, I'm sure it exists somewhere, but it's just an idea I came up with and I altered a recipe to make what I had in mind. And so basically it is chocolate cookies with mint chips, and it is just as amazing as it sounds. So, ingredients. We will need 5 tablespoons of butter. That's a little more than half of a stick of butter. A half a cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips melted. I've already melted them. 1 cup of light brown sugar. I think this will be enough, but if not, I can just top it off with white sugar and it's not a big deal. Half a teaspoon of salt. I will probably just be eyeballing that. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Again, just gonna eyeball that. 1 egg, room temperature. The butter should also be room temperature. I forgot to mention that. 1 3/4 cup of flour. If the measurements seem a little weird, it's because this was originally a much bigger recipe and I cut it in half. 3/4 of a tablespoon of baking powder and mint chips. I got these from nuts.com. They're a little bit pricey, but you get enough to make, I don't know, maybe at least 2, maybe 3 batches of cookies with it. So it's, if you want to make this sort of thing, it's worth it in my opinion. But yeah, if it's out of your budget, I will talk about some possible substitutions you could use. Nuts.com is not sponsoring me, but if you want to sponsor me, nuts.com, I would be more than happy to let you. So first we will cream the butter. I went ahead and divided this out while it was still solid. It is quite soft this time. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with having hard butter again. And I'm gonna go ahead, hopefully it's not too warm. I don't think it is. No, it feels about room temperature. I'm going to go ahead and add this. Actually, no, I take that back. I'm gonna cream the butter a little bit first. Gonna make sure not to talk while this is going this time. It gave me some volume issues with that first video. Okay, you know what? I don't know if that was necessary. The recipe actually says to cream the butter, the chocolate chips, and the brown sugar. So I probably didn't need to do that, but whatever. Let's add the chocolate. When I first, so this recipe is kind of adapted from Gretchen's chocolate chip cookies from her pre-vegan days. And I still have her chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's amazing. I love it. So I wanted to make chocolate cookies. So what I did was, originally I just replaced some of the flour with unsweetened cocoa powder. And that worked fine, but I noticed I was getting, when I went and rolled the little cookie balls at the end, I noticed I was getting like chocolate all over my hands. And one day, I wanted to make these and I didn't have quite enough unsweetened cocoa powder in the house, so I went ahead and replaced it with melted chocolate chips. And of course, you know, I also had to use less butter. I looked up a conversion. It was a big thing. As I'm talking here, I am measuring out the brown sugar. So anyway, one day I replaced melted chocolate. I used melted chocolate instead of cocoa powder because it's what I had on hand. And I found that I didn't get anything on my hands when rolling the cookie balls. So that's my preferred method. Now at the time I used melted chocolate and cocoa powder. I just used, you know, I just replaced some of it because I didn't have quite enough. I had some, I just didn't have quite enough. Oh, looks like I'm gonna have enough brown sugar. That's good. Geez, that's kind of hard. Hopefully I can get these to break up. So yeah, so what I ended up doing, what I'm attempting for this recipe, this is a slightly different version than before. I just replaced all of the cocoa powder with melted chocolate. So we'll see how it goes. This may end up being a 1.0 type of situation. I may have to remake it, but we'll see. I hope this turns out well, but it's a little bit of a experiment. Okay, so I'm going to cream this together and not talk while the mixer's going. By the way, this is supposed to go for 5 minutes. I forgot that part at first. Okay, so I just got done beating the butter, the chocolate, and the brown sugar for 5 minutes. I didn't film that because it would have been, I would have cut it out, most of it anyway, and it would have been a waste of film, but yeah, so there we are. So the next step is to add the egg and the extract. If you're doubling this recipe, you want to add them gradually, but since I've only got, well, I will add the egg and then I will add the extract. So I will just add the egg and the extract separately. Let me... So now that I've added the egg, one little egg, I'm gonna mix this. Now I'm sure I need to, oh yeah, I definitely need to scrape the bowl. Okay. Okay, I think that's good enough that I can add the vanilla. And like I said, just going to eyeball it. That looks like a good amount. So I'm just going to give this one more mix. So let's see how that looks. I think that's good enough. I don't know if it's perfectly mixed, but I think it's mixed well enough. Geez, already this thing is just covered in. Okay. So next is the dry ingredients, and oh, actually I have to detach this. I was hoping I wouldn't have to, but I think I do. It's going to be a little hard. So I talked about this in my last recipe, but what I like to do, even if a lot of times the recipe will say like, oh, sift it into a bowl and then add it, and it's like, why use an extra bowl if you don't have to? So I just put it right in there when you're able to add it all at once anyway. So flour, baking soda, and salt. So 1 1/4 cups of flour. Once again, I like to measure flour this way. Basically, you just don't want it all packed down, although, see, now it's kind of packed, but see, what I'm going to do is, that's actually just about 1 1/4 cups. Oh, it's 1 3/4 cups. Never mind, I'm still going. Glad I read that before, because I knew it didn't sound right. I'm like, 1 1/4, You can always take some out if I put too much in there. I think that's probably about right. So just dump all that in there. Flour everywhere. That's just how it goes. And I need 3/4 cup of baking powder. Not a cup. 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. I just use a teaspoon measurement and I just kind of eyeball it. I know baking powder is one of those things that's supposed to be exact, but I don't know that it needs to be that exact. See, to me that looks like about 3/4 of a teaspoon, give or take. And I'm sure if you use a tiny bit less or a tiny bit more, I can't imagine it makes that big of a difference. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which is, I think that looks about right. Again, eyeball it. Okay, so sifted ingredients get added now. Yeah, see, there's some little hard bits in there. little clumps. Okay, so now we mix everything together. And you mix until almost combined, because you don't want to, you definitely don't want to overmix this batter. So try to learn from what happened last time. Hopefully I won't get flour everywhere, but we'll find out. Nope, it's not perfect. Still flour going everywhere. Oh, there we go. And honestly, that's probably enough right there. All right, that is very stiff. But that's chocolate chip cookie recipes for you. So I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like that. Okay, so next is the mint chips, and I had 1 cup, which I know isn't going to sound like much, but it's because I like to place chips on top of the cookies, and that adds more, so. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, that does look like a pretty good amount. That's just about right. So just add these in, and I guess I'll start with the mixer. Geez, I got chocolate all over everything. So I'm gonna start mixing with this, and I'm probably gonna finish it by hand, but let's see how it goes. Yeah, that dough is very stiff. I think that's enough. I just wanted to kind of get some help with mixing the chips in there, and I'm just gonna make sure it did a good job here. Make sure there isn't any unmixed flour. Yeah, it all looks pretty good. This mixture seems very crumbly. I hope I didn't add too much flour. I was pretty careful about that, I thought. Okay, I can finally sit down. I forgot to mention that I preheated the oven for 350 degrees. So now what I'm gonna do is just roll all these. I really don't like how crumbly this is. I'm really kind of worried about that. It doesn't normally look crumbly the way it does here. I don't know what I could do about it, so this is not going to work. Okay, so I literally went over to the sink and put water in this. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it has a much better texture now than it did. So I really don't know how that happened. I've never had that happen before with this recipe. I am doing it a little differently this time, but the only difference is that I'm using all melted chocolate instead of using some cocoa powder. So we'll see how these turn out. I'm gonna say ignore this part of it and just be really careful not to add too much flour, because I think that's probably what I did. But I will test this recipe, and if it turns out that there's a much better way to do this, then I will, do an updated version. Okay, now I can actually scoop this and just roll these, and I'm getting chocolate all over my hands, which wasn't supposed to happen with using melted chocolate instead of cocoa powder, so that defeated the whole purpose. So yeah, I think I am gonna have to just kind of test this recipe and do another version in the future, because this one is just not turning out quite right. So I'm gonna make 6 of these for now. You don't need to see me rolling out all of these, of course. The rest of these I'm gonna roll out into balls, and but I'm going to put those in a bag, and those are going to go in the freezer, because I like to I never bake an entire batch of cookies. I like to at a time, rather. I like to just roll out all of the cookie dough balls and just put them in the freezer, and then whenever I want cookies, I'll just take out, I don't know, maybe what, 4 to 6, depending on how many. That's like 2 or 3 for me and 2 or 3 for my husband, depending on if I make 4 or 6. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick chips on 3 of these. Actually, no, just 2 of them, because I want to demonstrate something. But this is what you would do, like if you were making regular chocolate chip cookies. You just put, like, you know, maybe 5 or 6 chips on top of each one, and it looks nicer and you get more chocolate that way, which is never a bad thing. So these are ready to go in the oven. I said these are ready to go into the oven. That's not true. I lied. I am actually going to stick these in the freezer until the oven is done preheating, and then I'll put them in. I also like to freeze them first because then they don't spread out as much. So I'm going to put these in the freezer until the oven is done preheating. And then I will put these in the oven, and once they are completely done, I'll show you the finished product. Okay, so I put these in the freezer for about, I guess probably half an hour or so, and then I baked them for 15 minutes, and this is how they look. Unfortunately, my other camera's battery died, so you're not going to get a close-up, but I'll try to insert pictures, I guess. So you can see, these are the ones where I put the chips on before I baked it, and these ones on the right, I put the chips on afterwards, and you can see that they kind of brown in the oven. So, you know, depending on how much you care about the appearance, I would recommend putting them on afterwards. So these are still warm, which I like eating these when they're still warm. So let's see how they turned out. As much trouble as I had with this, you know, the dough was too dry and I had to add water, and I was kind of worried how it would turn out. These actually turned out amazing. These are freaking delicious. I mean, chocolate and mint, you can't go wrong there. So, you know, how else was it going to turn out? So if you don't want to spend the money to get the mint chips, or, you know, ideally, I hope there's a place that has them a little cheaper. But if not, you know, a place that I don't know about. But if not, if you don't want to shell out for the mint chips, one thing you can do, I don't know if they sell these all year round. It might be just a holiday thing, but you could always try those. In fact, this is what I did. When I first came up with the idea for this recipe, I had a hard time finding mint chips. So what I ended up doing was I got some peppermint flavored Hershey's Kisses, and I just kind of cut them up to roughly, you know, this size, and it worked beautifully. And there's also like stuff like after dinner mints. You could cut those up. If they're mint and chocolate combined, you're not going to get as much of a mint flavor, unfortunately. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily recommend after dinner mints, like you know, something that's mint and chocolate combined, like Andes, for example. I tried those once too, and yeah, you don't get quite as much of a mint flavor because it's partly chocolate. But yeah, however you want to make these, I highly recommend it. And I may try the original recipe again where I use the cocoa powder instead of the chocolate chips, because maybe that one's a little more foolproof. Maybe adding chocolate makes it, I don't know. I don't know what happened with the recipe coming out all crumbly. I'm hoping that all I did was add too much flour. I feel like that's probably what happened. Maybe I'll look over the recipe again to see if maybe I wrote down something wrong too. That's also a possibility. So yeah, that's it for this one. Let me know if you make these, and I'll see you next time.